we provide direct legal services to individuals facing deportation, and we work on projects with community groups and local service partners to advance the rights of immigrants at both the local, the state, and the national level. Our direct legal services focus on immigrants who are facing deportation in the local immigration courts. Our students provide gold standard representation in trials before the court, in administrative appeals, and before the Federal Circuit Courts of Appeals if that's necessary. Throughout all of our work, the clinic aims to advance humanitarian protection so that that's available to all who need it, and to separate immigration law and policing from criminal law and policing so that immigrants don't face disproportionate and improper punishment based on their race. I direct the clinic and I work with Shane Ellison, who's the supervising attorney in the clinic. I've worked for about a decade with students in different law schools to advance and defend the rights of immigrants facing deportation. I've worked with students to successfully challenge their clients' deportation before the U.S. Supreme Court, to end their clients' prolonged detention, to win asylum, to be able to stay in the United States with their U.S. citizen children who are vulnerable and have special needs, and to return to the United States through a special program designed for military veterans. Shane joined the clinic after about a decade serving as a legal director of a large immigration legal service nonprofit in the Midwest. Before that, he was an asylum officer in the New York Asylum Office. And he's used that experience to work with students to make major advances in asylum law, both regionally and nationally. Students are eligible to enroll in the clinic beginning the fall of the 2L year. We also love to work with students over multiple semesters. So we frequently figure out ways in which students can enroll in the Advanced Immigrant Rights Clinic for a semester or two after their initial semester in the Immigrant Rights Clinic. We've also worked with students to engage in independent study projects that align and support with the work of the clinic. We also often have LLMs enroll in the clinic in their second semester, which brings a great sort of experience, diversity perspective to the work that we do. In addition to the clinic, one of the things that I love about working at Duke is that I have an opportunity to work with the Duke Immigrant and Refugee Project. This is a student-led group that has worked with the clinic over the last several years to become the largest pro bono project at the law school. It allows students beginning shortly after they arrive as 1Ls to volunteer with pro bono opportunities that can include preparing asylum applications for Afghans who've been evacuated, to work with individuals who are in immigration court and need help providing and preparing their asylum applications to protect their rights. Students will typically, do a lot of client interviewing and client counseling in the course of the clinic. They also often identify and then work with expert witnesses to prepare reports and statements as well as testify in court. They engage in legal briefing, which can be at either the trial level, the appellate level, or amicus briefs on national impact issues. They also work with community partners, so they run meetings, with outside advocacy groups, and they learn to connect their work with the broader immigrant rights movement. Students appear in immigration court, they appear in federal district court and the federal courts of appeals. They negotiate settlements with the government on behalf of their clients, and they develop advocacy and litigation strategies to present to local partners and community groups, as well as then execute on those strategies. Students work extensively on client interviewing and client counseling, and often involving individuals who are survivors of trauma. and developing the skills that are required to do that well and to do that responsibly. Students also are key and leaders in developing case theory and case strategy, so that they can identify the facts that need to be gathered, the evidence that needs to be amassed, and then they go and do that and meticulously put together the evidence that's required to prove up every aspect of their client's case. Students also have the opportunity to refine their legal research and writing skills. And often our work requires a complex analysis of administrative law, state law, and federal law. And so students have, ways to push themselves beyond their 1L legal research and writing experience and really take that to the next level. A key tenet of our clinic is that students have the primary responsibility for their cases. And this means that students learn how to break complex projects down into discrete pieces, organize those, assign roles and responsibilities, figure out how to sequence those so that they meet all of the final deadline and the intermediate deadlines. And learning how to assume that role of the primary responsible attorney is the skill our students most often comment on at the end of a semester as being critical to building their confidence and their capabilities as a lawyer. We've heard from alum that talk about how the firms, that they're working in are impressed with their just case management skills, that allow them to take on complex matters, and organize them in a way that's going to be successful. So this year, one of our students, we represented two Black deported veterans through a program specifically designed under the Biden administration to facilitate the return of military veterans. We successfully brought those two clients home to their parents, to their brothers, to their children. And I got to see remotely our student who assisted the first man that we were able to bring home, meet him at JFK after 15 years and celebrate his long overdue return. That was just a remarkable moment, not one that we get to see in the immigrant rights world very often. And following on that success with another success for our second client, and hearing about our student give him the news that he was going to get to return home was really a highlight of my career. And those students were the ones that were working with those families, navigating, the embassies, the flights, all the arrangements to get somebody home after, more than a decade away. And then finally, there is a special sort of sense of satisfaction walking out of immigration court when students have gone through hours often of directing the testimony of their clients, responding to government prosecutors, working with expert witnesses to deliver sort of key testimony, both around, the conditions of the client's home country and their sort of special circumstances here, and delivering opening and closing arguments. And sort of walking out of there with a client, with a student, with the client's family, just knowing that representation was bar none, and those students couldn't have done a thing better than what they did, at that trial. Often, large law firms are working with us as co-counsel. They take our referrals. We love working with alums after graduation on cases that are showing up in their pro bono practice. And large law firms and pro bono counsel and representation through those firms are often leading the way in major class actions, in challenges to immigration policy and law, as well as in the asylum offices and in immigration court. And so students leave our clinic well prepared to take on those kinds of projects long after they leave law school, and continue to make, major impacts, both in the lives of the clinic and in the area of law.